Nouf Abd Rabbuh Al-Za'anin is angry with the complicity of her Arab neighbours, who have not only been silent as the Palestinians face being erased, many of these countries support the Zionist entity in one way or another. Many others in Gaza have expressed the same sentiment. Have the Palestinians truly awakened to the reality that the majority of the Arab nations have no interest in the principles of justice or the concept of the Ummah and just care about themselves? Welcome to Women of Resistance, where on this edition we are bringing you the story of Nouf.
There are Palestinian eyes that have seen history in the making, lips that have cried out for justice longer than most of us have been alive. These Palestinians have borne witness to some of the most powerful moments in their history, and God willing will continue through their very existence to give voice to Palestine and her story. From the 1967 war to the current genocide, Israeli crimes have been personally witnessed by individuals who continue to share their journeys.
اسمي نوف عبد ربه الزعلين، من سكان بيت حنون، انولدت في بيت حنون. ابوي ما كانش يشتغل، كان عنده ارض يعني 5 دلومه، كان يزرعها، كانت مزرعه برتقان ويضمنها من السنه للسنه. وكان ابوي يتاجر في البقر والغنم، وكان يذبح، يعني يبيع كل اسبوع، يذبح عجل يحطوا على باب الدكان. واحنا كنا بنات بقينا نساعده، نذبح مع العجل ونسلخه ونقطعه ونبيع للناس. حرب 67 اقول لها كل البنات سجلوا في المدرسه اللي انا وصير اصيح. قعدت اسبوع لما راح سجلتنا في المدرسه، ولما خلص الحرب رحنا على المدارس ولينا نقرا. وصلت صف ثالث اعدادي.
This new phase in Palestinian history has brought the past into sharp focus.
واليهود عندنا صح بقوا يطوقونا، ما كوش يضربوا فينا زي هيك، ما كوش يعملوا فينا هذا العمايل. خلص اللي بدهم اياه يروح في الليل ياخذوه يحبسوه بس. هي الحياه كانت قبل الحرب كويسه، وعايشين الحمد لله ومستورين، وقاعدين في دورنا معززين مكرمين. وايش ما في دارك ما حد بيعرف عندك حاجه، مستور في دارك بيتك. بس هذا الحرب شحطتنا، وانا بقينا مبسوطين ناكل ونشرب ونعمل كل شيء وعايشين في امان. يعني الامان وانا من رب العالمين على عباده.
The Western-backed Israeli genocide has brought upheaval, confusion and chaos to Nouf and her family. The additional complications of having to juggle the worries of immediate safety to remaining at the bedside of a sick daughter made the situation even more intense.
من يوم 7 أكتوبر بقيت نايم في المستشفى مع بنتي. ما حضرتش النزوح، ما حضرتش النزوح بالمرة. كنت نايم فين في المستشفى في غزة. لما قرأت الرسالة الصبح على الجوال، يما بدهم يرحلوهم، رنيت عبني على طول، قلت ايش بساوي؟ قرينا طلعت بالولاد على المدارس لسه في المعسكر. اول ما طلعوا ثاني يوم طلعت من الشفا على المعسكر، خليت بنتي نايمه لحالها في المستشفى وطلعت بدي اروح ادور على اولادي، اشوف اولاد ابني وبناتي والراحن، بناتي 5. لما شفتهم قاعدين في المعسكر يعني خلص اطمنت عليهم، رحت عليهم مرتين بعدين قال لي ابني خلص ترجعيش يما. بقيت الطريق صعب ساعتين لما نصحى، اركب كاره اركب سياره اركب كاره. لما انا كنت اصلهم اطمنت عليهم بعدين بطلت اروح. لما طلع من الساعه 10 ايام قعدت بنتي وطردونا تطريد، يعني لسه ما طابتش. طردونا، قال في ناس اولى من فوق يعني نروح مع المدارس. 45 يوم طلعنا على رفح، قعدنا في رفح 6 اشهر. بعدين اجر نزوح رفح رحلنا على الدير. لما صارت الهدنه رجعنا على بيت حنون 15 يوم. والله لسه بندقدق في الخيمه وبنظبط لين ما خلصناها. عاودنا رجعنا طلعنا هنا على غزه. يعني كان هذول 15 يوم حسيتهم احسن ايام من كل الحرب. عايشه في بلدي في امان كنت.
The issue of a permanent displacement often comes up for Palestinians like Nouf. When you're actively being bombed, the thought of seeking shelter elsewhere is a real concern. But in the end, the ties to the land override the temporary hardships.
وين نروح؟ وين ننزح؟ على ني بلد، مين بلد تقبلنا؟ الواحد ما فيش زي أرضه زي بلده زي هواه. طب أنا بقول ما فيش أحلى من هوا بيت حنون ولا ترابها، بموت فيها، بلدنا عزتنا.
Gaza's very topography has been altered. So have the very psyche of the people because of the unrelenting sea of difficulties brought on by the genocide.
ما فيش أكل، فيش خضرة نشتري، فيش لتر السيرج 80 شيكل، مين بده يشتريها؟ واحنا قاعدين لا شغل ولا وظيفة ولا شهرية ولا حاجة، إن وجه الله الكريم. والله حد الله ابني لا بيشتغل ولا ما يشيل الولد، والثاني استشهد. المية هذا احنا بنعاني من المية. تيجي في البلدية في الأسبوع يومين، مرات بتجيش مرات بتيجي، هيا الحين جاي بنعبي. وإنما هذا للغسول مش للشرب، مية الشرب بنعبيها من السيارات اللي برا. يعني الحياة صعبة على المية وتعب، ننقلها مع السفرت من برا بعيدة علينا، ولا ما هي نافعة. الحاجة بدها تظل تعمل لك هذا سرية الرز بتيجي بتظل ثاني يوم بنلاقي محمد خربان بنكبها. وطبايخ ما نطبخش وقالب نقليش عشان ما فيش. الخضرة نارهم ولعة، كرب بندورة 25، كرب البصل ب 30، والسيرج غالي. حتى لو كانت الخضرة رخيصة السيرج غالي ما نشتريهاش، ما فيش سيرج نقلي.
History will, rightly, not be kind to this crop of regional leaders for their lack of support for their Palestinian brothers and sisters.
ولا نطبخ والله حدنا معنا ولا نكتب نايمين ولا ما هم متحركين علينا لو خاطر كنا نموت. ليش بدهم يفزعوش لنا يعني؟ ولا بيقولوا نحيت وين انتم؟ احنا بنقول عنهم متأمرين معانا مع اليهود. ليش صامتين الصمت هذا كله؟ الدول العربية كلها يفزعوا معانا، يشدوا معانا، يقولوا حد الله، يوقفوا الحرب. ساكتين كلهم بس صارين ياكلوا مناسف وبكبوا الباقي. طب يبعثوا مصاري للشعب هذا دعم، ولا بده يعني خلاص الشعب الفلسطيني بدهم مش ياكل ولا يقولوا بدناش يا الشعب الفلسطيني ويريحوا حالهم.
The strength and resilience of the Palestinian woman has been a thing of wonder, but Palestinians are exhausted. They need the violence to end.
بدنا وقف اطلاق النار للحل، ودلال وشال الدم هذا شلال الدم يقف، ولا ظل اطفال ولا ظل شباب ولا ظل شيوخ ولا ظل نساء ولا ظل بنات صبايا، كله راح. ولا ظل دكاترة ولا مهندسين ولا معلمين، كله هذا كثير فقد الشعب من الحاجات هذه. المرأة الفلسطينية الغزاوية واخذت القوة من اللي قبلها، من الناس اللي قبلها، ستها سيدها أجدادها أبوها الوحدة إخواتها، ناخذ الشجاعة منهم.
Nouf is issuing a global rallying call. Help end this genocide and save the children, the ones who bear the highest price, the injured, the hungry, those left without an education, or worse.
وصل العالم يقفوا معانا بس يقولوا وقفوا اطلاق النار عن الشعب ويعيش بأمان. يعيشوا أطفالنا زي أطفال بقية العالم كله، يعيشوا بأمان. بدهم يلعبوا، بدهم ملاهي، بدهم تعليم. بيطلع شعب جيل جاهل مش متعلم بيعرفش يكتب اسمه، بدهم يتعلموا الأولاد يعيشوا زي بقية الدول العربية والأجنبية زي أطفالهم، وأطفالنا يعيشوا زيهم في أمان. من حقهم إنهم يعيشوا ويلعبوا يقروا يتعلموا زي أطفال العالم كلها يعيشوا. يعني ولد ابني عشانهم كبار بيصبروا على الجوع زينا زيهم، وبقية العالم بقية أولاد الناس. أنا عندي بنت، هذا بنت ابني هذه مصف أول، هي الصغيرة عندنا. طب بدها أكل، يعني كنا حتى الطحين اللي تكون عندنا خليها على قدها، أعجنها على قدها وأخبزها لها عصاج على النار وخليها لها، خليش الأولاد الكبار ياكلوا منه. احنا الصغير الكبير صبر حاله بحي الله حاجة، بكيت بسكوت حي الله حاجة ياكلها بس بصبر. الصغير الكبير بصبر، بس الصغير بصبرش على كده.
For this Palestinian elder who should have been looking forward to her golden years, Nouf now passes time in physical discomfort, psychological torment, dedicating herself to those who rely on her mothering spirit and abilities. Israeli forces would be happy for this stalwart of Palestine to never know another moment's peace as they continue their campaign of eradication. Don't let them have their way.
بقينا كويسين قاعدين، أنا الحين فيش في خوف، فيش مكان آمن. هناك قاعدين في دورنا آمنين قاعدين فيش حاجة. هم الحين كلنا خوف وخوف حياتنا، بننامش الليل. أنا من علي عن نفسي بنامش. والله ما بنام. بنامش الليل بالمرة، عمل راسي مصدع وجعني من قلة النوم. وأنا مريض الضغط كمان. معي ضغط. طول النهار أشتغل في الخيمة. واشتغل هان بظبط برتب. مرات بجلي الاسطول هذول كلهن من برا ومن جوا، وهذول القرب بجليهن كلهن بنظفهن. الجلي من العجة بجليه ومسح بغطيها، هي الغطا مرفوع عنهن بغطيه، مش ملاحق عليه تنظيف من العجة. خيمة بتكها بطلعها برا، بطلع الفراش وبمسح الأرضية تاعتها الشادر بمسحه وبخليها تنشف، بعدين بعود افردها ثاني. بولع النار، هي كانوا النار برا، بولع النار. حتى ولعت نار سخانة مية عجنت. أنا بولع النار عشان فيش غاز، الغاز خلص انقطع. وأنا عيني ممنوع أقعد على النار، ممنوع على الدخن، عيني فين عمليات الثنتين، هذه واحدة وهذه واحدة، هي غرز. وبعدين عندي جفاف في عيني. وفوق هذا بقعد على النار، بتعب منها كثير، بتعب من النار. عيني أنا قاعدة عندكم لما غمض عيني بيحرقني زي الفلفل. بس مضطرة مجبورة أقعد عليها، ايش يدفعني غصب عني بدي أسويها، أقعد على النار. سخن مي يتغسلوا، سخن مي للعجين، بطبخ زي هيك زرف معكرونة حاجة للأولاد، بولع النار.
Joining me in the studio today to shed further light on the plight of Palestinians is British Palestinian activist and advocate Lubna Speitan. Welcome, Sister Lubna.
Thank you, Sister Sakina.
Very difficult to hear the story of Nouf, just like, you know, we've been listening to different women in Palestine. Why is it so important, Lubna, for us to hear the story of Palestine from Palestinians like you and Nouf?
I feel for years, decades even, our voices have been silenced, and there's been widespread attempts to continue, and now we're seeing, over especially the last 2 years, the increase of state repression. And vitally, and what's been missing for far too long, are Palestinian voices. And we, of course, the attempts to silence us, again, it doesn't serve the interests of the colonizers for us to have our stories heard. For people like my father to relate the stories of the suffering that they've endured, how they've been forced from their land, how everything's been ripped from them, the mass slaughters, the several families and of our own members of our families that have been erased. And they don't want the stories of resistance there, because the one thing that they're infamous for is the dehumanizing and the demonizing of our resistance. Yeah. In spite of us having that right under international law, yet our lives, we've been dehumanized to the point that it doesn't matter. And then the aggressor can call themselves and claim they have a right to self-defense when they do not. They are the oppressors, the occupiers. Only the occupied and the oppressed have a right to claim self-defense. And they do not want our narratives to be heard. They do not want the world to understand that we are a people who have been imprisoned and are fighting quite simply for our liberation. And it's a powerful story when people are aware of the history. It's hard to gaslight, it's hard to deflect, it's hard to alter a narrative that is fixed, that everybody is aware of. But,
do you feel also that, you know, just the fact that a lot of stories are told about Palestinians, but most of them are told by people who are not Palestinians, like ourselves, you know, but the fact that you bring in Palestinian women like yourself, but also Nouf, you know, saying it from the ground, does it change, you think, the perspective of what the West sees a Palestinian woman as somebody who cannot, you know, tell her story in as powerful a manner as we are hearing?
From Nouf, nothing will be more powerful than the stories from the ground, from those that live there. And as a child of the diaspora, my stories will be different. I'm not in the ground. It's so painful watching that from afar. I'd rather be on the ground with them, and it would be far less painful than to have to watch them and not be able to act. But again, we have freedoms here that they are denied of. And it's so vital that the stories from the ground are relayed to the world so that they can see and witness for themselves, as they are now, the horrors that are inflicted upon them. And we must let their voices be heard. We must raise their voices. And for those that can't speak, we have to be those voices.
Absolutely. Now, Nouf talks, very painfully about the lack of support from the Arab countries, how they have completely disregarded the whole of the genocide. Lubna, what has been the traditional historical relationship between Palestine and its Arab neighbours?
There is an utter betrayal, and there always has been. And it doesn't serve ultimately their capitalist interests, and this is it. It's like the sanctions by America that they'd be threatened with, the power, the stranglehold. They're afraid of another uprising like the Arab Spring. If there's revolt, they're afraid of the Arab resistance. But the thing that they must be more fearful of, and that they need to understand, is that if they don't act now, far worse is coming for all of them. It does not stop at Palestine. What is happening to Palestine is laying out the ground for further future injustice to occur. It is paving its way.
Yeah. I mean, for someone like me who is not Arab, I find it very difficult to understand the psychic, of them not seeing Palestinians as one of their own. These borders are really, artificial. They are ideally the same people. How do you think this works? I mean, how do you explain this psychic that they don't see it that way? They don't see Palestinians as their own.
No, and and even though those countries now, I mean, there are thousands, if not millions, of Palestinians who've been forced from their homes that live in those countries, but even their voices are silenced by the government of those countries. Palestinians have not only had to fight and defend themselves from the Israeli aggressors, but also the Jordanians who wouldn't permit them, and they're afraid. They're forced into silence. The governments do not want them to rise. They do not want them to have the power of the resistance back previously. And again, it's all about power, strangleholds, capitalist interests. And if they think that that's going to serve their interests, they're very, very wrong. And far worse is coming to them too.
Now, we've seen, on the other side, countries like Iran, Lebanon, Yemen, who may not have that close a border, except for Lebanon, of course. They have been speaking with such unwavering support and material support. I mean, they've taken a hit in their own countries. If you look at what happened to Lebanon, if you look at Iran, having to face their own lives, their own countries at risk because of their pure support of Palestinians. How do Palestinians themselves see the relationship with these countries like Iran and Lebanon and Yemen?
We have a lot of love and respect for those that stand by us, and they're the ones that will also know that it does ideally serve the interest of everyone to protect each other in the region, because it doesn't stop at Palestine. But the love and the protection, especially, with Yemen, they've been the poorest, inflicted with such awful, grievous tragedies by the West, by America. They still stand resilient as a people. They have so much respect for Yemen and the others, and the fighters in Lebanon who have stood, and it's come at a price. And they know, and Iran has obviously been attacked, and there is a test of Iran's power. It is a power play. They could have continued, and there could have been a very different outcome, which I had hoped might have been the case, but we just hope that they'll all realise that only in a unified effort will there ever be freedom and liberation for all of us. That those who don't act there, it's very grave what's coming to them.
Let's just remind our viewers that you're watching Women of Resistance, where we highlight the plight of women who have been subjected to a genocide in Gaza. Now, all these problems, Lubna, the whole, creation of this occupation was the West, the British obviously put, the occupation in place. Why is it so important for us to be in the forefront of trying to end this occupation from this very land where the problem was created?
Well, as you said, we're in the belly of the beast, it began here and it should end here. We cannot be a country that talks of democracy, of liberation, of equality, when they continue with this long history of colonizing, of corruption, of killing, and the displacement of people. It's awful to think that this government will still permit it, but like we said, you know, they're colonizing interests, but this must come from the ground. It's the people that have the power to stop it, the workers have the power to stop it. If the government are not going to stop it, we must.
Do you see a movement? Do you see a massive change since October 7th when it comes to people on the ground here in the UK?
Yeah, I mean, not just here, but worldwide. We've seen a worldwide movement. You know, people have become more educated since the 7th. They've realised even the mass propaganda, people are learning, they are seeing for the first time, if anything it has done, is taken this veil from people's eyes and mobilise people. I mean, people here have been marching, their basic civil liberties are now at risk, you know, when draconian measures are taking place to prevent that dialogue, to prevent non-violent resistance from taking place. And unless we ultimately keep pushing back there, then these things won't change. But we need more action, we need stronger action beyond, you know, marches and petitions and symbolic gestures. We need action on the ground.
What action is it that we can take? Because, you know, I mean, this government in particular, people had a lot of hope for the Labour government, and we've seen it worse than, you know, you could have imagined, the amount of arrests that are happening, the control of trying to control and, you know, not ensure that this movement goes ahead. But what can we do other than marching and being on the streets? Lubna, if somebody's watching and is really feeling the pain, you know, for the Palestinians, what can we do?
The economic isolation of Israel is vital, and we have many historic examples served to us, from how the Irish defended their rights to South Africa apartheid, which is really vital. The BDS movement was one of the most powerful things that we have done worldwide to support that. We need full economic sanctions, not limited to partial boycott, partial divestment, partial sanction. Everything must stop. Israel is a racist apartheid state now committing genocide. It has been endorsed for far too long. It never should have been, but we have the power to dismantle it. It's to refuse to purchase any goods. If you work in a shop, if you're in a union, mobilise them. Get them to support us so that we don't have to handle, ship, load, move any products to and from Israel. It has to be full isolation. And we must ensure that the Palestinians have the right to practice the armed struggle. Because when you look at the South African apartheid movement, it supported the armed struggle, and only in that did they manage to fight and liberate themselves with the world supporting BDS.
And of course, armed struggle, you know, international law allows that when you are an occupied, you know, entity. Armed struggle is something that is within the international law. But time is also running out, Lubna, for Palestinians. And I think, you know, it's so vital right now for the world to really come together. And all other differences can wait. But right now, you know, people are literally being erased. We heard the story of Nouf and the pain of the children and the women. And I think, you know, it's really high time that this is put to an end. Thank you so much, Lubna, for being with us today. And thank you for watching. We wrap up today's show with the beautiful sounds of Palestine by the artist Saif. Until next time, goodbye.